and I want to make this tutorial as short as possible. So next up, we're gonna have to create the button handler, and for that, we're gonna need a new folder here, additions, and yet another folder called triggers. And in here, I'm gonna add a new trigger, button handler. Now, if you go here to dialog, you will see dialog item is used. There's no way to specify which dialog item. It's just any dialog item here. So you can't really, any dialog item is pushed, this is going to come in here. So we're going to create a condition that will check if it is one of the buttons for this dialog. If you have multiple dialogs and many buttons and so on, this will really help you. If you looked at my map that I linked in my last tutorial, you will see that I created some conditions in my map that did just this. So we're going to make a function first. Get dialog, select get dialog item number. Gets the ID of it's going to return an integer. It's going to be a function, and parameter is going to take dialog item. So all we have to do here now is loop through our dialog items array and check if this dialog item passed in is equal to the item in the array. If it is, we just return the number it is in the array. And if we don't find it, we return 0. So for each, temper integer from 1 to total characters. Then we don't do any unnecessary loops. In here, we check if then. If the parameter dialog item equals to dialog item's position of temp int, then we found our button. If not, we didn't find it. If we found it, then return temp int. And after this loop, we're just going to put a return 0 or -1 even. -1. So it will loop through all our buttons that we stored in the dialog items up here. And it will check if the dialog item we pass in is equal to this dialog item. If it is, it will return the position it has in the array. And based on this, we can now create a condition. You could have created the condition. You could do the check yourself, but I like to use conditions. You could also do the check here inside the trigger, since we're going to have to call this to get the dialog item number anyway. And it would be slightly faster since you only call this get dialog item once, but I think it looks prettier to have a condition, and I can teach you how to make conditions. So, oops, I see we should have a button handler there. So, is char select dialog item. Alright. In here, we need to take a parameter dialog item. This will all be coming together soon. If you're confused, and just try to stay with me. If alright, so all we do in here is we do a if then condition comparison. We do our function get dialog item number. We send in our parameter the dialog item that is passed in. If that is larger than 0, or larger than or equal to, even though we should never have a zeroth item, but whatever. If it's larger or equal to 0, then it belongs to our dialog. If it's less than 0, then it doesn't belong to our dialog. So return. This conditions always return true or false. So if it belongs to our dialog, we return true. If it doesn't belong to our dialog, we return false. And now we can put this condition into the conditions here in our event. Here, you just take the use dialog item. Voila! It will now only go into this trigger if the item that is used is clicked on the dialog belongs to the character selection dialog. Because this here will pass on the dialog item that was used into this function, which will pass on the dialog item further into this function here, which will check, loop through all our dialog items, see if it is one of our dialog items. If it is, it will return the number that it is in the array. If it's not, it will return -1. Then it comes back here, and it will see if it's bigger than 0, we found it, and it will return true. If it's -1, we didn't find it, and it will return false. And you come back here again, and if it returned true, the function will run. If it returned false, the function will not run. Then the first thing we can do here is dialog item number. And yeah, we can just set it up here actually. Get dialog item number. Use dialog item. You will notice now that this function will be run twice. However, there will be so few buttons in this dialog item array that it will not have an impact on performance, especially since the user has to actually click a button for this thing to be run, and they can only do that so fast. So this will have virtually no impact on performance, and I simply think it looks better. We could have just done this, and then we could have got an if here inside here. So like if then, or we could basically have moved this if here into the other one, and then if it was -1, we would just exit, and then we would do our actions after. But I like this way. It's a personal preference. Alright, so we come in here. What we have at this point is the item that was pressed. We also have the player number that pressed the item, so that would be the triggering player. And we know that it was a button item on this dialog that was pressed. So what do we have to do now? First of all, we're going to check if the character has already been selected for the player's team, and to do that, we first have to get the player's team. So we're going to make another function. Player team ID. I'm going to space this one out a bit. I just like it better like this. And it's going to return an integer with the ID of the team. Parameters is going to be player ID. We could do this again. Alright. And turns the team player is on. You could write more into your descriptions, but I'm just doing this quickly so we can get moving. So we're going to have to do a for each player in player group. Actually, we have to go through the player groups first. I'm just going to hard code this. You could have the total amount of player groups set in a variable as well, but we know that there's 2 player groups here. So I'm just going to go with 1, 2. Alright. To speed this up a bit. And we need an integer. Gonna have temp int, and then inside here we're gonna do another for each player in player group. Player variable is going to be another temp player. All right, and player group